For over 2 decades, Monica Lewinsky stayed largely silent while her name became synonymous with scandal. She endured public shaming, career collapse, and institutional betrayal, all while the man at the center of it thrived. But now, 27 years later, she's breaking that silence with searing clarity. In interviews, on screen, and through her own media platforms, Monica isn't just revisiting the past, she's rewriting it. She's calling out Bill Clinton for his lies, the abuse of power, and the silence that followed. And for the first time, the world is finally listening to her version of the truth. The breaking point. It was January 1998. Monica Lewinsky woke up to find her name plastered across front pages, above the fold, as she later described. It wasn't just one paper, it was every newsstand in America. She'd become a household name overnight, not for anything she achieved, but for who she had been involved with. The Post ran 127 articles in just 10 days. Talk shows mocked her. Cartoons ridiculed her. She was slut-shamed, laughed at, and torn apart by total strangers. But the betrayal that cut the deepest wasn't from the public. It was from someone she once trusted. Linda Tripp, her co-worker and supposed friend, had been secretly recording their conversations. Every word Monica confided was being saved, not to help her, but to trap her. The FBI cornered her with a threat: wear a wire or face 27 years in prison. She was just 24, terrified, and caught in a storm that spun way beyond her control. And at the center of that storm, President Bill Clinton, who would soon step in front of the cameras and say the infamous line, "I did not have sexual relations with that woman." Those 9 words weren't just a lie. They were a lifeline thrown to himself, while Monica was left to drown. At first, she supported the lie. Maybe out of guilt, maybe out of fear. But eventually, it became clear. While she was shielding him, he was quietly discrediting her. Behind closed doors, he minimized everything. In public, he painted her as a phase, a fling, a footnote. But this wasn't a fling. It was a power imbalance of the highest level. The most powerful man in the world. A 22-year-old intern. Monica's world began to collapse. Her self-worth shattered under the weight of humiliation. Her name became a punchline. Her entire life was redefined by a scandal she couldn't control. Only survive. But that survival would soon give way to something stronger, something louder, something hers, caught in a web of power. It started as a secret, but it turned into a storm. Monica Lewinsky was only 22 when she entered the White House as an intern. She was young, idealistic, and excited to be near power. But what she didn't expect was to become a pawn in it. At first, the relationship felt thrilling, but as things unraveled, so did the truth. When Bill Clinton told the world, "I did not have sexual relations with that woman," Monica stood by him. Not because she wanted to lie, but because she felt she had no choice. She was scared, ashamed, and stuck, backed into a corner by lawyers, investigators, and headlines. But something inside her shifted. She began to realize that while she was protecting him, he was protecting himself at her expense. Publicly, he brushed off their connection. Privately, he questioned her stability. She had to watch as her name was dragged through the mud, while he stood behind a podium with full authority and confidence. That's when she saw the truth. This wasn't about love or mistakes. It was about power. He was the President of the United States. She was a young woman with no armor. The difference in their worlds was massive, and yet she carried all the shame. Her reputation became a target. People called her a liar, a stalker, a seductress. It didn't matter what the facts were, the narrative was already written, and Monica had no control over it. But quietly, she started rebuilding. She began therapy. She started understanding what had happened to her, not just in private, but in the public eye. She wasn't just a woman caught in an affair. She was a woman trapped in a system built to silence her. And that realization would one day lead her to take the microphone back, defining her scandal. For years, Monica Lewinsky was reduced to one word: scandal. She was mocked, humiliated, and labeled everything from unstable to obsessed. The world laughed at her, but no one asked how she felt. No one cared what it cost her. She admits now that she made mistakes. But what hurt the most wasn't the affair. It was the way the world responded, the jokes, the shame. The way Clinton's denial was framed as strength, while her survival was treated as weakness. She later called his denial gaslighting on a national scale. It wasn't just a lie, it was a move. That erased her identity. That press conference didn't just deny the relationship, it denied her existence. And from that moment, she wasn't a person anymore. She was a scandal headline. Her career opportunities vanished. Her personal life collapsed. There were days she couldn't leave the house, nights she couldn't sleep, years where she felt like she had no future. But through that pain, something began to grow. Introspection. She began learning, healing. Slowly, she planted the seeds of resistance. She started thinking about how she could reshape the story that nearly destroyed her. And when the chance came, she took it, regaining narrative power. In 2021, Monica Lewinsky did something bold. She became a producer on Impeachment, American Crime Story, a dramatization of the scandal that had once silenced her. This time, she wasn't just the subject. She was part of the creative team. And she didn't hold back. She insisted the show include honest scenes, like the infamous thong moment, because she wanted it to be real, not sanitized. She chose integrity over image. She knew people might judge her again, but this time, she was speaking on her own terms. The series gave the public a new lens. People began to see the emotional weight, the manipulation, and the fear she carried. The Monica Lewinsky they saw on screen wasn't a punchline. She was a human being. That moment marked a turning point. She went from being the scandal to telling the story, from silence to voice, from victim to narrator. And with that power, she began calling things by their real names. Calling out Clinton. For years, Monica stayed quiet about the man at the center of it all. But in 2022, on the podcast Call Her Daddy, she finally said the words so many had been waiting for. She called the relationship an abuse of power. She said plainly, "He lied, he gaslighted me," and most strikingly, she said he should have resigned. This wasn't about revenge. It was about truth, accountability, closure. Monica explained that a real apology would have mattered, not just to her, but to the culture at large. If the president had stepped down and admitted fault, it would have set a powerful precedent. Instead, he walked away with his legacy bruised, but intact. Monica, meanwhile, had to rebuild her identity from ashes. In 2018, Bill Clinton said he didn't believe he owed her a personal apology. Monica disagreed, not out of bitterness, but because she believed it represented something bigger, a refusal to take personal responsibility. She wasn't demanding a headline or a confession. She was asking for a moment of honesty, a sign that people in power could admit harm and mean it. And through her calm, direct words, she made something clear. This wasn't about her past. It was about how we shape the future. Flashy vs. authentic apology. Over the years, Bill Clinton has issued statements, some brief, some vague, some carefully crafted to sound like apologies, but none that Monica Lewinsky could call personal. To the world, it seemed like he'd moved on. But to Monica, that silence spoke volumes. In 2018, during a televised interview, Clinton was asked directly, did he feel he owed Monica a personal apology? His response was simple, no. That moment wasn't loud or explosive. It was quiet, cold, dismissive, and in many ways, it felt like a second betrayal. Clinton's public apologies had always sounded distant. They addressed the American people or the situation, never Monica by name. To her, they weren't apologies at all. They were PR damage control. No acknowledgement of emotional harm. No attempt to repair. Just another performance from a man who once held the spotlight and the power. Monica later said that a sincere apology and a resignation back then would have changed history. It would have told the world, power doesn't excuse abuse. But instead, the institution rallied around him. Lawyers, aides, even political allies helped protect his position, not her dignity. She explained it simply. The system chose protecting power over caring for people. What she wanted wasn't grand or dramatic. She wasn't asking for a public trial or punishment. She wanted a human moment, an acknowledgement, something real. And what's striking is how she chose to talk about it, not with rage, but with restraint. Her words were clear and calm. She didn't need to yell to make her pain heard. She only had to tell the truth. And in doing so, she exposed not just Clinton, but the culture that enabled him. Reclaiming through media. Monica Lewinsky didn't just take back her story. She turned it into a platform. In 2025, she launched a podcast titled Reclaiming. The name says it all. It's not about reliving the scandal. It's about taking ownership of what was once used against her. Each episode dives into themes like shame, resilience, and public fallout. She brings on guests, celebrities, writers, survivors, who have faced their own moments of public humiliation. Together, they unpack what it means to live through judgment and come out stronger. But this isn't just therapy. It's storytelling with purpose. Monica uses her voice not just to reflect, but to educate. She shares lessons from her trauma in a way that helps others feel seen, heard, and less alone. TV also became a powerful space for her healing. First came Impeachment, American Crime Story, where she served as a producer. Now, Reclaiming expands that work, from docudrama to discussion. These aren't just shows. They're part of a larger movement, telling stories with truth, care, and control. And in all of this, Monica isn't playing the victim. She's steering the ship. She's a producer, a host, a voice for others who've been shamed by a culture that moves too fast to ask, what's the real story? Championing cyberbullying reform. Before the term cyberbullying became mainstream, Monica Lewinsky had already lived through its brutal reality. She wasn't just publicly shamed, she was one of the first people globally to be humiliated on the internet. And when the world laughed, no one paused to ask how it felt. Years later, instead of hiding, she chose to speak out. In 2015, she stepped onto the TED stage and gave a talk titled The Price of Shame. In it, she detailed what it felt like to have her name mocked, her private life exposed, and her humanity erased. The talk went viral, not because it was shocking, but because it was raw, honest, and relatable. She didn't come with statistics or slogans. She came with her story, and she used it as a warning and a call to action. Public shaming as a blood sport has to stop, she said. The internet is the superhighway for cruelty. Since then, she's become a powerful advocate for digital dignity. She's worked with anti-cyberbullying groups, spoken at schools, partnered with organizations, and made it her mission to prevent others from going through what she endured. She often says that her trauma has become her purpose, not because it defines her, but because she found a way to transform it. Monica became a leading voice in the global conversation about public shame, mental health, and how we treat people online. And every time she speaks, she reminds us, behind every trending topic is a human being. From scandal to survivor, Monica Lewinsky is no longer the woman the tabloids described. She's not the mistress, the intern, or the punchline. Today, she's something much more powerful, a survivor who rewrote her own story. After the scandal, she vanished from the spotlight for years. She moved to London. She earned degrees, a BSc and an MSc from the London School of Economics. She tried working in marketing, design, even retail. Every job was a step forward, quiet, slow rebuilding. But eventually, the silence didn't feel right. She had something to say. And when she came back with purpose. She didn't return to relive the past. She returned to reclaim it. Now, Monica is active in media, writing, and public speaking. She gives interviews with thoughtfulness. She writes essays with clarity. She appears in documentaries not as a scandal figure, but as a truth teller. She never downplays what happened, but she refuses to let it be the whole story. Her name is no longer linked to scandal. It's linked to reclamation. She has shown that it's possible to survive shame, to grow from it, to become more than what the headlines said. And in doing so, she gave hope to others who were written off too soon. Defining modern anti-Me Too ethics. When the hashtag #MeToo movement took over headlines in 2017, Monica Lewinsky didn't jump in for attention. She waited. She listened. And when she finally added her voice, it was with precision. In 2018, she tweeted with the hashtag #MeToo and called her relationship with Clinton what it truly was: an abuse of power. That statement changed everything. It forced people to look back at the 1990s with new eyes. Suddenly, the story wasn't just about a scandal, it was about power dynamics, consent, and how young women are treated in professional settings. Monica didn't center herself. Instead, she used her experience to add credibility to the larger conversation. She became a bridge between the past and the present, between the way things were and the way they should be. She reminded the world that consent isn't just about saying yes or no. It's about whether someone truly has the power to say it freely. And in her case, as a 22-year-old intern facing the most powerful man on earth, the answer was complicated. Her story became more than personal. It became political, cultural, and deeply relevant. And through it, she's helped guide modern ethics around workplace relationships, accountability, and institutional failure. Monica Lewinsky's voice now carries weight, not because of what happened to her, but because of how she's chosen to speak about it. Not just for herself, but for every person who's ever been silenced. And she's not done yet. A direct challenge to institutional culture. Monica Lewinsky didn't just call out a man, she called out a machine. A system built to protect power, preserve image, and crush anything or anyone that threatened its illusion of control. Her story wasn't just a scandal. It became a blueprint for how institutions handle uncomfortable truth. They don't admit. They spin. they silence. For decades, the White House orchestrated the narrative. Staffers leaked half-truths. Legal teams spun press briefings, and officials whispered just enough to shape public perception. Behind closed doors, her character was picked apart. In front of cameras, her name was conveniently avoided. She later said, "I was made a story before I had a chance to tell mine." But Monica saw the bigger picture. This wasn't just about Clinton. This was about how the highest levels of power can sacrifice the voiceless to protect the throne. She's spoken candidly about how her reputation was collateral damage, used to safeguard a political dynasty. Her pain became part of a crisis management strategy, her shame a tool to deflect attention. The political machine treated her not like a human being, but like a liability, a threat that had to be contained, spun, and erased. Yet she refused to disappear. Over the years, Monica studied how these systems work, not just political ones, but corporate, media, digital, how institutions deflect blame, control messaging, and bury victims under layers of spin. And now she's dedicated herself to breaking that pattern. Through her TV productions, essays, speeches, and podcasts, she's not just telling her story, she's dissecting the system that tried to erase it. She demands accountability, not just from people, but from the structures that let abuse hide behind prestige. She's spoken at universities, tech summits, journalism conferences, and policy forums. She's pushed for reforms around online harassment, workplace dynamics, and institutional transparency. She's even consulted on legislation, bringing real-life experience to conversations usually driven by theory. Her message to organizations is simple, but powerful. Build ethics into your DNA. Don't just react when you're caught. And what makes her voice so powerful is that it comes from lived experience. She knows what it's like to be abandoned by institutions that claim to uphold justice, to be vilified by media outlets that claim to seek truth. She's lived the cost of their failure, and now she's calling them out. Monica Lewinsky is no longer just the woman behind the headlines. She's a woman confronting the very system that made her suffer. And in doing so, she's making space for others to do the same. Her fight isn't just personal. It's cultural, institutional, and deeply necessary. Cultural shift. Victim to voice. The most powerful thing Monica Lewinsky ever did wasn't just survive the storm. It was find her voice and use it. And not just to speak about her own pain, but to stand up for an entire generation who have been burned, humiliated, and erased by public shame. She didn't have a publicist. She didn't have a strategy. What she had was something stronger: truth, lived experience, and the courage to face the same world that once laughed at her. And with that, she began flipping the narrative. Through media projects, public interviews, keynotes, social platforms, and her podcast, Monica didn't just reclaim her identity. She built a platform for others to step onto. Her goal isn't to relive the past. It's to reshape the way we talk about power, trauma, and redemption. She's now a producer, speaker, writer, podcast host, and digital advocate. But labels don't really capture her role. What she does is lead. She moderates the very conversations that once crushed her spirit. Conversations about shame, consent, female agency, internet cruelty, and systemic accountability. And what's most striking, she's managed to monetize her own story without selling it out. There's no spectacle in her work, no thirst for sympathy. Her content isn't clickbait, it's deeply intentional. It's not crafted to shock, it's built to resonate, to comfort, to explain. Monica's work has helped shift how we think about scandal. She shows that behind every viral mistake is a real person, often overwhelmed and human. She encourages others to find their truth and say it out loud, even when it's painful. Her message is direct. You get to decide how your story is told. That's the heart of her mission, narrative ownership. Because what was taken from her in the 1990s wasn't just privacy, it was voice, dignity, and future. And by reclaiming her voice, she's given thousands of others permission to reclaim theirs. Her evolution isn't about a clean ending. It's about transformation in real time. Not perfection, but progress. Not erasure, but rewriting. She's shown that you don't have to be defined by your worst moment. You can use it as the starting point for something greater. She is no longer the intern, no longer the scandal, no longer the joke. Monica Lewinsky is a cultural force, a survivor with purpose, and a reminder to the world that you can be buried, but not broken. She speaks not just for herself, but for anyone who's ever been reduced to a headline and wants to take their power back. Open conversation. Should he apologize now? After nearly 3 decades, one question still lingers. Should Bill Clinton apologize now? Monica Lewinsky says yes, and not for closure, but for something bigger. She's been clear that this isn't about revenge. It's not even about healing her own wounds. It's about accountability in leadership, about what it means to hold power and what it means to abuse it. She believes a public apology and an acknowledgement that resignation would have been the right thing could have set a cultural standard, one that says even the most powerful people don't get to walk away without owning the harm they caused. Right now, Monica isn't demanding a headline or press conference. She's asking a deeper question. What does ethical leadership look like when no one is watching? To her, the answer lies in taking responsibility, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's decades late. She's also made it clear that this conversation isn't just about Clinton anymore. It's about politics, media, workplaces, how we handle harm, how we teach the next generation about power, consent, and responsibility. Today, her ask is about more than her. It's about whether personal accountability still matters in public life, and whether we, as a culture, are finally ready to listen. Monica Lewinsky is no longer a footnote in someone else's legacy. She's reclaimed her voice, her story, and her future. After 27 years, she isn't just calling out a former president. She's challenging a culture that let it all happen. And in doing so, she's rewriting history on her terms.